Sounds great.
Okay, next slide. Of course, this is informational purposes only. Next slide. So what are the basic drug panels that we see both the workplace do, parents doing is a 5-panel and a 10-panel. Again, most commonly is the 5-panel, which covers marijuana, cocaine, opioids, PCP, and the amphetamine family, which also includes methamphetamine. Next. So marijuana, of course, is our hot topic in Idaho. Marijuana is the #1 drug that we have in Idaho, that we see all the way. I've seen them as young as 7 years old, but on a national average is 12. But testing levels for confirmation, so when the specimens go to the laboratories, they test initially by light or immunoassay at a level of 50 nanograms. And then if it's over 50 nanograms, then they do a GCMS by gas chromatography mass spectrometry at 15 nanograms. So HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, allows everybody to have at least 15 nanograms worth of marijuana in their system at any time due to secondhand smoke. Marijuana is the one drug that stays in the system up to 90 days. It is absorbed by the fat cells, so the heavier you are, the longer it stays in the system, as to where all the other drugs leave your body within about 3 to 5 days. Even though it's been legalized in many states around us, or all the states around us, Idaho still has a problem with marijuana and opioids and methamphetamines. Those are our 3 biggest drugs that we have. Okay, next. Some other things that we teach with parents and educate employers on is what type of products are out there that people use to try to use in the workplace, use in their bedrooms. I always teach parents that if they see a lot of dryer sheets in their child's bedroom, but they don't ever help with the laundry, that should be a red flag. They use dryer sheets to absorb the smell of marijuana. And then, of course, using soda pop cans, beer cans uh, to smoke so that they can dispose of them very quickly. You'll see there's, of course, bongs, but we don't call them bongs anymore. They are called pieces of art. If you go into a shop that sells them, they usually have signs. The ones I've been in the last couple of years have signs up that you cannot call them bongs because it's illegal to sell bongs. And then you see in the bottom right hand corner where they poured out an apple and they smoked from the apple. 420, a lot of people are not aware that 420 is April 20th. That is the National Marijuana Smoking Day. Or 420 is known among the kids the best time to smoke at home because the parents aren't home from work yet. So there's all different types of products. There are flashlights that switch into um, smoking apparatuses. You can see the magic marker there that switches into. So there's a lot of things out on the market that allows people to try to beat their test and also how to hide the products from employers or from their parents. Next. So smoke, here's just a few of them. You see the lipstick holder. That is one of the items that people use. It's easy to conceal. They can smoke their marijuana, put the lid back on it, and you would never know if that was in somebody's purse. Unfortunately, they do teach you on uh, Google, the internet, how to use soda pop bottles for both marijuana and methamphetamine. You can see here other items that are used for like the spark plugs, regular pipes that you can buy at most any of the tattoo shops or the marijuana stores. Next. Vaping is one of the highest ways to be able to get up to 55% of it into your lungs. Now they have marijuana that you can vape. They have the different hemps. They have the different flavors. You look at the different types of vape pens that are out there. They've come a long ways in the last few years. But the big with kids or teenagers in the top left or top right hand corner is the inhalers. Now they can insert hemp marijuana into inhalers. And again, parents are not going to know, or an employer is not going to know that there's marijuana in those vape pens. Most of the marijuana that they're vaping is odorless. So it's a safer way to be able to use it in the bedroom or at work so that they can't get caught. Okay, next. Edibles. This is one of the issues that I'm really starting to put a fight against. It has been tried nationally to get these removed um, over the last couple of years. Same thing with the ways that people try to beat their drug test. You know, it's $1 billion a year just for different types of pipes and products that people use. But now we've got the edibles that come into play. And we're seeing kids as young as 2 years old that are getting into the edibles. We're having grandparents, most commonly, grandparents or other guardians that bring in kids to have them tested. They'll do hair testing, they'll do urine testing if they're old enough to understand that. Because they're getting into the edibles and they're getting the reefers, they're getting the fruit poofs. We see the gummy bears, the gummy worms. Those are probably the ones we see the largest. They now have the hemp soda that's out there that you can buy over in Oregon. Of course, you know, Ontario is not that far from us here. And all these products you can buy over at the marijuana shops in Ontario. The problem is people, parents most commonly, leave them out, and then the children think, oh, there's gummy bears or there's gummy worms. Rice Krispies, the same thing, pretty much any of these products, and then the kids eat them. We get into the teenagers when Colorado first passed their marijuana laws. Teenagers were overdosing on edibles because they take a couple of gummy bears, think, it's not doing anything, so I'm going to take a couple more. 20 minutes later, no effects, so they'd take a couple more. And then they got to the point where they were overdosing on them. So it was a huge issue in the emergency rooms in Colorado when they first came out with it, uh, as young as 5, 6 years old. But again, we've seen some here in our Idaho office, in our Meridian office, as young as 2 years old that has gotten into the gummy bears. Okay, next. So when I was talking to David, I asked him if he wanted me to put in any statistics that, you know, right here on the border of Idaho with Oregon. And prior to legalization, 8.8% of the fatalities tested positive for marijuana or THC. 12 months following the legalization, it went up by 10%, up to 18%. And then 5 months after that, it went up to, I see a typo there, sorry. 5 months after that, it went up to 21.7% of all drivers and fatality tested positive. So what happens? A lot of people say there's no problems with people driving under the influence of marijuana. Well, from the statistics of 21.7% of drivers involved test positive, it's definitely an issue that we're going to have here in Idaho. We already have it. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any statistics of the fatalities for the state of Idaho, only for the state of Oregon. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So this one just got released at our conference about a month ago. Is the positive marijuanas in the workplace? And you can't really, or at least I can't see the bottom of the screen, but 305% increase. And one of the largest ones is in the state of Nevada. Nevada has made so many changes, they don't even test for non-DOT marijuana anymore. But between 2016 and 2020, marijuana use in the workplace increased by 305%. So definitely a problem in the workplace. So many companies are starting to contact us saying, hey, we don't really care if they smoke marijuana. We just don't want them using the hard stuff. And I cannot agree with that, that's for sure, because we're seeing more and more accidents, more fatalities happening due to marijuana. Next. Here we're talking about safety sensitive. I wanted to put this in because a lot of people are all for legalizing marijuana on a federal basis. And here, when we talk about federally mandated testing, this is your truck drivers, your school bus drivers, your airline pilots, your railroad conductors, anyone working on the railroad, the Coast Guard, anyone, you know, navigating the cruise ships or regular river rafting boats. This all falls under federally mandated. And look at the marijuana 97% increase just in federally mandated. So we're seeing huge increases in all the drugs in all the states. Fortunately, Nebraska and Idaho are the only two states that do not have any marijuana laws. And so hopefully we can put it off as long as possible. But again, federally, they've stated that it probably will happen in the next 2 years. But the big push that they're doing now is that the people that are federally mandated, again, the transportation department is wanting to make sure that that stays illegal for marijuana, and that anytime we're on the roads, we're flying on cruise ships, that we're safe with people that have been drug tested. Okay. Increases. So you can look at the positive rate. And when you look at this, you think, well, that's not really that high. But you look at Idaho, and this was between 2016 and 2020. But we have had an increase considerably of amphetamines and opioids. If you look at Oregon, opioid use is increasing. Idaho, it's increasing. On a national level, it is starting to decrease for opioids. Fentanyl, that is one of the drugs that we're starting to see more and more companies test for. It is one of the drugs that DOT, Department of Transportation, is requesting that gets added to the Health and Human Services drug panel, but they have not made that finalized yet. So we're waiting to see what they're going to do with that. Okay, next slide. So the next issue that we're having to deal with is CBD oil. As all of you, I'm sure, have been watching, you know, the farm bills, and the problems that we have with CBD oil is if you test positive for it, it is considered a positive test in the workplace. We are seeing companies make CBD oil that is over the 0.03% ratio of THC that can be in it. We have had Dr. ELSOHLY has stated that the highest they've seen of a CBD product that was labeled as a 0% THC had 28% THC in it. And so the farm bills that have passed, again, Nebraska and Idaho are two that don't have any other legalizations of CBD products or marijuana products, when they rephrase that, THC products. It's definitely an issue that is growing because people are wanting to use those CBD products. Again, Health and Human Services out of Washington, D.C., and the Department of Transportation are not accepting CBD usage as a medical explanation for positives. Okay. Two states with only industrial, again, is Idaho and Nebraska. 35 states plus Washington, D.C. have passed comprehensive medical marijuana laws and legalized marijuana on their individual states. Again, we're watching what the feds are going to do, what the president is going to do. Dr. Kevin Saget, is really working to get legalization not to happen on a federal basis, but he has agreed that it's going to happen. Now all we have to do is educate in each individual state to make sure that they don't extend the ability to use marijuana to younger people. There are some states, Nevada being one of them, that is wanting to be able to give marijuana to anyone up under the, to the age 15 and higher. And that's what we want to see not happen. Okay, next. So one of the big issues we have now is that legally, a lot of places and companies and their policies are talking about the proper terminology of cannabis. Marijuana has traditionally been understood to be the flowering top and the leaves of different cannabis sativa plants, which has a higher level of psychoactive components of the plant. Hemp, as you know, is not supposed to have anything greater than 0.03% of THC, but we know because there's no federal guidelines on labeling or producing of it that we see levels again way higher than what they're supposed to be. Okay, next one. One of the things we're getting asked a lot from employers and from parents and probation and parole is asking if we test for the Delta 9. One of the things that we can do, and it can be done through ELSOHLY labs, and it's one of the slides coming up. Unfortunately, the cost of it is outrageous. So if you have a CBD bottle that you want to have it tested at an independent laboratory, ELSOHLY labs can do that, but the cost is $150 per sample. Dr. ELSOHLY is trying to get that price down. But right now, that is the only laboratory in the United States that is doing the Delta 9 concentration testing. Okay, next. So CBD is coming in creams, oils, salves that people are using, but now they're also using it under the tongue. They're smoking it, all different types. So CBD products containing cannabinoids, excuse me, my language today, some which can be psychoactive. Okay, next one. The biggest ways of CBD, so here are the different statistics. So if you use it sublingual and you put it under your tongue between 30 and 60 seconds before swallowing it, you're only getting between 10 and 35% of the effectiveness of it. Ingestion, gummy bears, infused foods, beverages, edibles, 5% to 20%. Topicals, it skips the metabolism by the liver completely. It does not have a lot of, it has a lot of usage, but it does not have a lot of effectiveness. And then the number one is the vaping and the smoking. It has the best absorption, 45 to 55%. It enters through the lungs, passes into the blood, and distributed to your metabolism. So you're going to get 55% at that time. Okay. So with true CBD oil, it does not have to have any type of THC in it in order for it to be effective. The biggest problem, as I stated earlier, is that there's no legal regulations regarding the labeling that people put on it. Some people are making it in their homes, some people are making it in factories. But again, they can put a label on it that says it has no THC, and then whenever you test it, we're catching ones that are at 5%. The highest one we've actually been able to catch is at 13%. It just depends on where the product is made. So right now, as I stated, with employers, if they test positive by using CBD oil, it is considered a positive and they lose their jobs. Okay. So I have been requested, what laboratories, my apologies, what laboratories do test for CBD product. Dr. ELSOHLY, he is a world of wealth of knowledge. Again, $150 per sample that you want to send to have it tested. He does not require a custody and control form. He will accept a letter stating this is the product, this is how we obtained it, and that what you want it tested for. Do you want it tested just for the Delta 9? And then send it off to their laboratory and they will test it. Of course, you have to put on there who's going to pay for it and where the test results going to be. So parents can send in test samples. Employers can send it in, anybody that's requesting that information. Okay, next. So I put a link to ELSOHLY Labs on there just so that you can go on and research and even call. He will return your call, very German accent, but he will answer any questions that you have regarding CBD products. One of the big things, 69% of 84 CBD products were inconsistent with the labeling, so it's definitely happening out there. Unfortunately, again, with no regulations, there's not much we can do about it until that happens. Okay, next. So here are the states with low THC, high CBD marijuana laws. If you notice again, Idaho and Nebraska are the only two that has no marijuana laws. And then low, you have the light blue, Kansas, Texas, Iowa, Wisconsin. And then, of course, the dark green ones that are heavily into marijuana on a state and even individual city basis. So Oregon and Washington, Nevada, the three big ones around us are the highest, what we call problem children in the United States. Okay. Different products. Here's just a few of them. The important thing is to make sure that you read the labels. And again, be careful if you're using it and you work in a place that does drug testing. The rule of thumb is if you use it, again, there's no medical explanation of why you're using it. Okay. Next. So as we start talking about legalization in Idaho, is one of the things that's big is making sure that employers have rights, or that we just don't pass it and allow, it has to be very, very detailed. So in other states around us, the employee has more rights than what the employer does. In Oregon, Governor Brown is trying to pass it to where they can actually use marijuana. They can go on their breaks at lunch and the employer has to give them time to smoke their marijuana. We don't want to see something like that happen here in Idaho. If it ever gets legalized, we have to make sure that it's very detailed. What are the rights of the employers? What are the rights of the employees? Should an employer be able to terminate an employee if they test positive? Does it matter what their levels are? I had an Oregon employer call me and say, hey, if marijuana comes up positive and it's more than 250 nanograms, we're going to terminate them. But if it's under 250, we're going to keep them. I stated, that just did not make sense, that both is a safety hazard. But that was the only way they felt that they could get employees. Is if they use a little bit, we'll go ahead and use them. If they use a lot, we won't use them. Here in Idaho, we just had one switch to, we're not going to do it on pre-employments. We're okay if they use it at home, but if they test positive under a random post-accident or reasonable suspicion, then we will terminate them if they test positive for marijuana. So very detailed. Are we going to accept, if legalization happens in Idaho, are we going to accept saliva testing? Are we going to accept hair testing? What type of testing are we going to do, and what are the rights of the employer and the employees? Okay. So one of the things that we get asked by some of the anti-drug coalitions is, where can we get kits? So for your organizations, if you want to buy kits, we can get them at about $1 a piece. So a box of 25 is 25 per box. We have donated a lot to organizations. So if you are an organization and you only need one box to last you a year, please feel free to contact us and we would ship those to you at no charge. For parents that want to have their kids tested, they come in and they pick up kits such as the one you're seeing there on the right hand side of the screen. And a deal that we have with a lot of the high schools is that we charge the parents $10 for those. One of the most important things, we have a lot of, when one student gets in trouble at our high schools locally where we have offices, it seems like we get a lot of calls from parents at that time wanting to test their kids. And so we have a deal, like I said, with all of our high schools that we will do the testing for $10. But when the kids come in, some of them are upset, some of them are, just plain angry at their parents for doing it. And that's when we talk to the parents about being able to do it at home in their own setting. But when the kids get upset with their parents and they want someone to talk to, we're here to listen to them. And the most important thing I think that we talk to them about is, we've all made mistakes in our lives. And the question is, do we learn from them? And so we're seeing more kids getting involved. Marijuana is, it's still really high in use, but now since it's so readily available, even here in Idaho, it's readily available, is we're seeing kids starting to use other drugs. Attention deficit, ADD medication, they're using that, they're buying it at school. We are seeing a small amount of methamphetamine being used among teenagers. So again, one of the things that we try to educate the parents is to let them know, let your kids know you have the test at home and you can test them at any time that they choose to do so. And the most important thing is to educate the kids that they can talk to their parents about it and understand what the anti-drug coalition offices do to help parents and to go in and teach at the schools. We let them do that, but we're here available anytime that samples need to be brought in or parents need to bring their kids in to work with the children to get them not to continue to use drugs. Okay. So if you're interested in getting a free box of the instant test, the 5 panels, feel free to contact us and we'll definitely donate you a box of those. Going to the Oregon, it was asked how much marijuana is actually used in Oregon. Oregon is the number one state. It has surpassed Washington and Colorado, which were the other two states that joined in before Oregon. But look at these amounts. So 1,110,520,723 dollars was spent on marijuana in 2020. Look at the increase from basically 800 million up to more than $1 billion. The states, the one big thing that we try to educate people on is the states, yeah, they're collecting all this money in, but what are they spending it on? They say they spend it on recovery, they say they spend it on schools. Personally, I think $33 million for drug treatment and recovery services is not enough money. If we want the drugs to go away, if we want the drugs to get under control, we've got to have a way for people to be able to receive treatment or recovery services. So 33 million out of $1 billion is not enough money to be able to spend on that. If people want to get help, at least here in Idaho, there's not a lot of places that they can go for inpatient services. Teenagers, there are a lot of places, a lot of parents, excuse me, that are asking, where can we send our teens? They have a problem with drugs. Where can we send them? There's not a lot of places here in Idaho. I work with a group called Project Patch. It is a ranch up in Garden Valley, and they do take kids in, but they keep them for 1 year. They don't keep them just for the drug problems. They keep, why did they start drugs in the first place? So, a very good program that helps, and they have a school on the property that helps get that drug treatment for the teenagers. They only take 11 to 17 years old. The other thing that's a little disturbing is that in Southern Oregon, they went and tested 212 locations, and it showed that 58% of their samples tested positive for THC. According to the states around us, is that if a farmer is growing hemp, that it cannot have more than 0.03% of THC in it. If it is, then it's supposed to be destroyed. But that is definitely not happening in Oregon and Washington around us. So $1 billion in one state in 1 year. It's just really hard to comprehend. And unfortunately, over in Oregon, Ontario, that's closest to us, when you drive by any of the marijuana shops or the pot shops, as they're called, the majority of the license plates are from Idaho. So that is where they're going to get their supplies. Okay. And that is it. I left a little bit of time. I apologize for being delayed. I was expecting it to be 11:30 Pacific time, so I apologize for not being on right when it started. So I am open to questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Colleen? Colleen, can we share your PowerPoint with the group?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes, Kendall asked. So yes, we will be sharing out the PowerPoint, and we will also be sharing out Colleen's contact information. So if you would like to take her up on that offer of some testing supplies, whether donated or to purchase, you guys can go ahead and let her know. And I just want to thank you, Colleen, because as we are one of the last states to hold out on marijuana legalization here in the United States, it is becoming increasingly difficult to push the message to our youth that and our communities that just because people have said that marijuana is medicine, that they've given a perception that it's safer than it really is. So it has really made it difficult. I see a question. You mentioned you are seeing methamphetamine use among youth. Can you share what kind of percentages you are seeing?
Among youth, we're under 5%, definitely. Marijuana is still the first choice, and then your different opioids. But methamphetamine, we're starting to see around the 15, 16, 17 age group is where we're seeing the methamphetamines, but it's definitely less than 5%.
Is there a particular part of the state that is having a bigger impact? Do you know?
I can tell you the cities, which is over in the Minnecacha area, Burley, Burley, Rupert. That is probably the number one location in the state of Idaho that we see such huge positives with children or young adults.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? You don't have to say them out loud. I can read them to Colleen if you'd like. I think they want to have an early lunch. Well, thank you so much, Colleen, for giving us this workshop and your insights on what you do for a living. And we will be sharing out Colleen's information. So if you do figure out, oh, I have a question, like we always do as you're, moving throughout your day, you can always reach back out to her and ask her personally